Hello, here are the morning news. Venezuela's National Assembly approved an enabling law which allows President Nicolás Maduro to respond to exceptional circumstances presented by the latest U.S. threat to the country. This was the second and final debate on the law, which had to receive at least two-thirds majority while also specifying a time limit and purpose for the law. Also on Sunday, tens of thousands turned out to a mass rally in Caracas. President Nicolás Maduro asked Venezuelans to sign on to a letter he plans to send to President Barack Obama, demanding him to repeal the decree against the South American country.
We are going to take the letter. We are going to set the government of the United States to all of the public squares of the country, so that it's seen house by house, and for it to be signed by 10 million Venezuelans in order to send the letter as a protest to the White House.
As the Union of South American Nations, or UNASUR, met Saturday to call for President Obama to revoke his decree against Venezuela, numerous countries held events to show solidarity with Bolivarian revolution. Young Cuban artists organized a concert at the University of Havana, with thousands in attendance, including hundreds of international students. Argentina, Canada, Colombia, Ecuador, and Paraguay were also among the numerous countries to hold support rallies and events. The concert featured Cuban artists, including Adrián Berazaín, Patricio Amaro, and Raúl Torres, with foreign dignitaries attending. And meanwhile, a U.S. delegation arrived in Havana on Sunday for a third round of negotiations on resuming diplomatic relations. The delegation, headed by Assistant Secretary of State Roberta Jacobson, will meet with Cuban officials this Monday. The round of talks is expected to focus on removing Cuba from the U.S. list of countries supporting terrorism, according to the White House, while the Obama administration has spoken of its desire to see an embassy in Cuba by April. More in Latin America, large numbers turned out to opposition-led demonstrations against the government of President Dilma Rousseff Sunday. Called by right-wing parties and groups, protests took part in numerous Brazilian cities. In the wake of the ongoing Petrobras scandal, opposition parties have been calling for Rousseff's impeachment, less than 6 months since she was re-elected with a 4 million vote margin. Representatives from the Workers' Party movement said the protests showed the need to continue anti-corruption investigations, but also urged the need for national dialogue.
People who bang pots and pans must be respected. People who approve of the government must be respected. Those who think otherwise must be respected. We have to have dialogue with everyone. Our government rules for 200 million Brazilians. Dialogue is open to those who approve of us and to those who criticize us.
In the lead up to the opposition demonstrations, social movements, unions, and progressive organizations took to the streets in 24 Brazilian states in support of Rousseff's Workers' Party government and against the calls for impeachment, as well as opposition privatization of the state oil company.
The opinion of the majority of the population which voted for this government. Let's discuss where the government is taking us. We want a forward-looking economic policy, a constructive economic policy, which generates jobs and income. Let's discuss where the government is taking us. We want the agenda that won the election to be implemented. However, there is no place for an impeachment. Such an attitude is akin to a coup, retaliation by those who lost the election.
And in Palestine, months after the Israeli government agreed to respect the right of Gaza's fishing industry workers, many are still being harassed and even killed. Our correspondent Noor Harrison has this story.
Palestinian fishermen have been hit hard by the Gaza Strip's month-long fuel crisis. While already being subjected to the Israeli ongoing naval blockade, Gaza's fishermen have recently been confronted by Egypt's maritime authorities as well. Today, fishermen in Gaza rallied at Gaza's seaport and called on the international community to put a stop to maritime violations and assist in resorting Palestinians' right to fish freely in their territorial waters. Gaza's fishermen have faced various forms of abuse at the hands of the Israeli Navy over recent years. Palestinian boats have been seized and taken to Israeli ports, while many other fishermen have been harassed, arrested, and held by Israeli authorities.
This sea is our only way to feed our families. We were born as fishermen. My father and my great-grandfather are also fishermen. And for years, we never witnessed a worse fishing period as this year. Every day we are being harassed by the Israeli Navy. Many are being arrested and also have to face the lack of fishing materials and the lack of fuel.
This protest comes only a week after a Palestinian fisher was shot dead by the Israeli Navy. The victim, Tawfiq Abu Riyala, was fishing inside the 6 miles limit when the Israeli naval boats harassed his boat, killed him, and arrested 2 other fishers. Meanwhile, Israeli forces have continued to pressure Palestinian fishermen at sea, all under the pretext of maintaining a security blockade and effective siege, which is widely condemned by the international community. Noor Razin, teleSUR TV, Gaza.
And with Israel's legislative elections scheduled for Tuesday, the ruling coalition of Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party trailed in the latest polls. Speaking to supporters at the final campaign rally Sunday, the embattled Israeli Prime Minister told the voters to stop the left-wing government from winning an election. Candidate for the newly formed Zionist Union, Isaac Herzog, is currently leading the polls with a projected 25 to 26 compared to Likud's 20 to 21. The winner, however, will likely be a party that could form a ruling coalition, as no single party has ever won a majority in the Israeli Knesset. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry acknowledged his government and others must negotiate with Syria's government addressing the ongoing civil war. Kerry's declaration comes as figures put the death toll in the ongoing civil war at a staggering 215,000. The U.S. and other Western countries have long been backing so-called moderate rebel groups who have walked away from previous peace talks by insisting Al-Assad's must resign first. Despite continuing financing and training these groups, Kerry told Face the Nation that the country needs a political, not military solution. And a 19-year-old has been charged in the shooting of 2 police officers outside a Ferguson police station last week. Officials said the accused, Jeffrey Williams, has admitted to firing as a demonstration following the resignation of Ferguson's police chief was ending. The accused, who said he was not firing on police, but rather on some he had a dispute with, reportedly fired the shots from inside a car some distance from the rally. The prosecuting attorney said Williams was charged with 2 counts of first-degree assault, 1 count of firing a weapon from a vehicle, and 3 counts of armed criminal activity. Family and friends held a funeral Sunday for Tony Robinson, who was killed by a white police officer in his own apartment on March the 6th. News on this later killing in the string of fatal police shootings of unarmed black males set off protests in Wisconsin. And just days after an international court ruled in favor of Ecuador in its case against Chevron, Romanians also celebrated a victory against the oil giant. Locals and activists celebrated in Pughesa Sunday as Chevron was forced to suspend its plan for shale gas drilling and fracking in the region. An open-air religious service was held in a symbolic sanctification of the area. Last summer, Chevron was forced from the Polish village of Sorolo after 400 days of local protest. Let's go on. Fire crews have fought to prevent one of the Russia's most iconic landmarks from being destroyed by a fire Sunday night. The scaffolding around the bell tower of Moscow's Novovizhy convent, which had been under renovation, caught fire at around 10:40 local time. At least 300 square meters were damaged in the blaze. No injuries were reported, but 5 fires were on site to battle the flames. Built in 1524, the convent was placed on the UNESCO World Heritage List in 2004. A Mexican rower arrived in Cancun this weekend at his final destination after a remarkable 8,000-kilometer trip. Abraham Levy became the first man to cross the Atlantic Ocean, rowing solo from Spain to the Mexican tourist port 5 months ago. The 33-year-old rower, who wanted to raise awareness about the Mesoamerican reef system, had a state-of-the-art solar-powered boat and was supported by a team that accompanied him on a trip. More on this on our website telesurtv.net/English. Have a nice day.